and it hadn't been doing it today. I added this microphone so that what I found out is they said two microphones, one microphone per person. So I added these two microphones and they seem to be working fine. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're YouTube live. Okay. All right.
All right, I shared it out there too. When does the jazz thing start?
July 1st.
So July 1st. Okay, so it's coming up real quick.
It's gonna be nice. And, you were very said y'all want to supply some services.
Yeah. Yep.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ear to the Ground 197. I'm your host. My name is Bryan Foley, and I got in the studio today, I got Derek Jackson. Derek's the Director of Community Engagement for the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department. And first off, before I get into this, I'm a little in my emotions this morning. I'm somber and I'm angry. Last night yesterday afternoon, we had another homicide in our community. This one was in the Sugarbrook area. And the reason why I'm a little upset this morning is because this homicide, as are all of them, they're preventable. This one was preventable. It was unnecessary. As are all homicides, murders are unnecessary. But this one in particular, because the work that we do in the streets, the relationship that we have with the Sheriff's Department, I'm speaking of an organization which I'm a member of, Supreme Felons Incorporated. Talked to Billy, he gave me permission to speak freely this morning. I try not to mesh Ear to the Ground 197, Bryan Foley as an individual, and Supreme Felons over this platform that I have called Ear to the Ground 197. But this one right here, Derek, pisses me off and I'm hurt at the same time because, as I said, this homicide was preventable. I know, as we do, we connect the dots and we know who's who, what's what, where's where, and what's going on. the community. We have blood on our hands on this one. Because we failed not just this young man, we failed the family. We failed his mother, his father. I don't know if he has any siblings. We failed his friends. We failed, and the blood is on our hands. And the reason why I say the blood is on our hands, and I'm gonna say some things that might piss a little people off, but if you get pissed off, understand why you feel your way. There's ARPA funding monies that have been allocated to deal with community violence. And it is in Washtenaw County's offices right now, sitting there, as the proverbial has been said, like a check in a lady's purse. All you got to do is cash it and give it up. If those resources have been allocated to organizations such as ours, others, women and men working for a change, just to name a few, I think that we could have prevented this one. I say that because we would have had a more coordinated effect and relationship. And more importantly, would have boots on the ground to actually get involved with this work. County commissioners, y'all got blood on your hands. Quit playing politics with the money and take the brakes off of the checks and get them into the hands of the people. Derek, you got a book with you, a ledger with you before we get into this. And you shared it with me on a couple of occasions. And in that ledger, you have a list and names of people that you personally involved with since you came onto the sheriff's department, I believe. And now you have to add another one to your list. How many numbers you got in there now, good brother?
Man, well, first of all, you said a lot. And let me just say, it is a somber day. And I feel your anger, your hurt. And the more that we get involved in this work and know these young people and these families, it makes it difficult every single time. And I'm tired of adding names to the book. That's why I carry with me everywhere I go. So it's 40 plus names. We're on about to be page 4. And before I came here, I wrote this 18-year-old young man's name in this book. So I'll say, although I'm angered and hurt and upset and just sad, I would say that I'm not hopeless. There are things that we can do, are doing, should be doing more of. And I know you specifically called out the commissioners. Yeah. Got it. I think that the commissioners from the work that I've been on are at least been at the table with us. Mm-hmm. They have allocated that $2 million. Yep, maybe we need to get it and cash that check, but they've allocated. But there are other folks who haven't. And I think that's just as important for us to really highlight. Let me just go all the way back and say, you said this was preventable. Yeah. I've been saying all over the community that if it's predictable, it is preventable.
This one's predictable, bro.
We can predict if a young person is involved in gun violence and we know the proximity to that gun violence, there is a high likely chance that they're going to perpetuate gun violence in the future. The data shows us that. The examples of the names in this book, some of them showed us that. Exactly. The people you know you grew up with and watched have showed us that. So the question is the same that I have that you raised is, if we know it, yet we don't do anything about it, what does that say about us? And I say us, the larger community.
And that's why I say the community has blood on its hands. Good morning, everybody. I'm seeing the comments in there. We like everybody to hit the share button, Y1, and then like Y1, and then share. I asked people to put Y1 in there because I believe in Ypsilanti first. Mm-hmm. I believe that people who need help the most should get most help. And that's right here on the far eastern side of Washington County. Ironically, Derek, we scheduled the conversation where we're going to talk about community violence. And we had this show scheduled for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be celebrated, recognized, or whatever.
Rightfully so.
Well,
this brother's going to be recognized. Y'all should know that.
So we changed the show.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it, for those of you who tuned in to see Randy Scott, he's running a little bit behind. But also, Randy had the wrong date in here. He had it for today.
Mm-hmm.
And he's running behind. He's in traffic. I just talked to Johnny Lawrence a little while ago. So they're running a little bit behind. And gratefully, you showed up on time. And we can go from there. Like I said, we were talking about community. We're going to talk about community violence. And look what happens last night. And we're right here. So, Derek, this was your topic.
Yeah.
Community violence. Where do we go from here? What do we do? Where we at?
It's probably my topic because we should be having this conversation on a regular basis. There is a group of people that came together last summer because we had 3 homicides that happened to young men in close proximity to one another. And I got to give credit where credit is due. The mayor of Ypsi pulled us together just to grieve and to talk. And in that conversation, it was such a good conversation that someone said, we should meet next week and talk about solutions. So every week since last summer, minus a few cancellations here or there, this community group, I know you've come to some of the meetings, you have people in that group. When I say the community, it represents the community. People who have gone to prison for killing someone and are now changing the community in a positive way. People who've lost loved ones to gun violence. Some elected and appointed officials sit around that room. And what we've been doing is learning from one another, teaching one another. We've been reading the book, Bleeding Out, together. So gave a copy. We've been putting copies all over the community. So we're all operating from the same language and a starting point. And now let's talk about solutions. So there's 14 things we are putting out there in the community that we can do. You talked about one, investing in the workforce that can do this work. We ain't talking about folks who got this college degree, who sit up in there. We're talking about folks who lived and have experience and know how to get in there, have the courage to do it, the expertise to do it, and the relationships to be allowed to come in and do that, to prevent some of this retaliatory violence, but also just violence in general. That's one of the recommendations. How do we invest in that workforce so that people can be paid to do this so important work? One last thing I'll just say about it is that this really is a disease. There is a disease of violence. And we're working with some fellas out in Detroit. And I've said this a lot, but they told me when they started working here, they said, Derek, the disease of violence that y'all have is deeper than the disease of violence in the city. And I said, well, what do you mean? They say, you don't have more violence, but because y'all are so geographically small, you can't physically get away from the violence. Even if you change your mindset, you got a job, you're doing good things, you still in the midst of it geographically. People gonna find you, see you, and perpetuate it. We're so familial. The relationships overlap so much. So many families who are connected, right, which I found it interesting. When I first moved here, everybody asked, who your people?
Yeah, that's how we identify.
That's how you identify. Absolutely. Right. And so you put that into this community violence context. People have so many close relationships that even if you and I beefing, even if I shoot at you and we squash the beef, because trust me, you've been in the room with me. We squashed some really hard beefs before. Yeah. But what happens? Your people, your friends, either in your ear chirping, continue to egg it on, or even if you squash it and you done with it and you move on, they still harbor that resentment and that trauma and that anger, and they perpetuate the violence. 85% of our shootings in the county are retaliatory in nature. So think about it.
That
if you can predict it,
when you first brought that to my awareness,
yeah,
and you asked that, and people were, the number so low, nobody even came close to, and 85% the reciprocity.
Yeah. And let me be clear. I just started asking every officer, detective, looking at our internal data, what would you say retaliatory? 80 to 85%. And so when you know that, if something happens to someone, we can predict there's a high likelihood they might retaliate, friends or family might retaliate. That's what we talk about when, if we can predict it, we can prevent it. If you know something just happened to someone, what do we do to interject, to give them a different path to deal with that anger, that trauma, that sorrow, so they don't take it out on somebody else? That's what, when you talk about what angers me, we know these things.
Exactly. And that's what I'm getting at. We know these things. And when you shared the name in the group chat, and I started looking at the chat, and I seen some of the comments in the chat, and then I Googled the name, and I seen what was going on. This is why I say this was completely preventable. No, I don't know the exact nature, to be honest. You get what I'm saying? I don't know the exact nature.
Yeah.
I've been around here a long time to understand what's going on, right? And when I contacted you, it hadn't been released because I was on the phone with a female friend of mine, and your guys was right behind her fence in her house with as she described, with the long guns out, right? And they had the Sugarbrook neighborhood shut down on the spot. And I mean, they was on the cat's, on his heels, and people's lives were interrupted in June, right? On a hot summer afternoon. And we started looking at the after effects of secondary trauma, stress on that. People running around here scared. You got a killer on the loose, and the police were literally knocking on people's doors, asking to look at their cameras and stuff like that, actually pulling cars over to see if, what's going on. And like I said, because I'm on the telephone and I'm listening to her and her son, of course, I'm telling them to be safe. Y'all need to, you get what I mean? You don't know what's going to pop off, And that's why I say this was real personal to me more. And not only that, well, Derek, like I told you in the chat, the mother of my children lived just a few doors down, and my son and daughter there. You know what I mean? So these things don't happen and occur in a vacuum where they're just the perpetrator and the victim. The whole community is victimized by this type of activity, and it's preventable.
It is. And so you touch on two really important things. I want to be clear with folks, though, who are watching, who might hear this. There are things being done. So although we might be in this space where we're really upset because obviously we lost another one, there are positive movements happening in this community. For the fact of someone setting aside $2 million just to do this work is a step we never had before. The fact of your organization and y'all being able to respond out to the scene and to the streets, that never happened before. Right. The ability for law enforcement to be in the room alongside of community organizations to talk about how we don't arrest ourselves out of this situation. We find community alternatives out of this situation. Never happened before. So at the same time, we lost another young person. I don't want people to forget that we also, not long ago, saved a life by stopping a beef. So there are things being done. But to get back to you, go ahead. Go ahead.
Derek, I had to reiterate on that. There are things being done. What I'm simply stating is that take the break off the checks so that the people can do the work more.
I got you. I ain't gonna argue with you on that.
So we don't know there's things being done because I'm in the rooms, I'm in the meetings. You know what I mean? But go ahead, bro.
Yeah. But just to get back to your other question around the community trauma, think about what it does to an entire community. Mm-hmm. Our kids have not forgot how to learn. Our teachers have not forgotten how to teach. Mm-hmm. But our schools were not designed to deal with this level of trauma.
Yes, sir.
Our hospitals were not designed to treat entire communities suffering from trauma. We now know, because the science tells us around adverse childhood experiences, these traumas that happen to us as young people, it doesn't just impact us psychologically. It impacts us physiologically around our actual physical health and our mental health. You think about all of that. I'll give you a question that a young person posed to me. Young person said, Derek, how come when we do a vigil, we put the candles out, the teddy bears out, the crosses out, we remember our loved one at that spot where they died. A week later, it's all cleaned up and it's gone like nothing ever happened there. Right. But I see someone who got hit by a bike crossing the street and the ghost bike stays there forever.
Stay there forever.
And so this was a young person who recognized how we treat some people different than other people's. They're both traumatic. So one of the recommendations is not just from a sheriff's office perspective, not just a community perspective or school perspective or community organization perspective, but for all of us, are we trauma informed and dealing with these situations appropriately? I'll give you another example. Young person who goes to a local school district dies of suicide or an overdose. What do? We call an assembly. We gather the social workers and the therapists around. We help those students grieve, rightfully so. Young person gets murdered in our streets. What do? Not that.
Right.
What's the difference? The trauma still matters just as much. And in some cases, I would say both tragic. But when you got violence and someone shot someone, the likelihood of retaliation and more violence is even more increased. You need to really wrap around your students and your kids. One of the other recommendations is we need a community protocol on how to respond to violence, trauma informed with the right people doing the work, so we actually can stop some of the stuff from happening. But these are community things that need to be put in place for us to actually make some of these changes. But it is preventable. So we can actually do this.
Yeah. Mama Gail says, give us the money. and you're right, Gail. I mean, that's what it is. I really like that analogy because you're right. When somebody overdose, even a car accident, if you will, they have student assembly and they have pictures and all that kind of stuff, everything, you know what I mean? But these type of things, because of that ignorant misunderstanding, misaligned stigma called no snitching.
Well, and sometimes the young people who are involved in these things, this is the other reality, not in every situation, but in many situations, it is very rare. I'll say it this way. It's very rare for someone to be involved in a shootout or a murder and they not have some connection, relationship, something is going on, right? Like just a random innocent bystander in Washington County is rare. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's rare. I say that because sometimes the folks aren't necessarily directly connected in school, or they ain't been to school in a while. And so sometimes people might think, well, they're not necessarily a student, but they impact their student body in a way. They're still loved by people. How many times you didn't talk to somebody? I done sat on mother's porches. I done sat on his friends' porches. And when I talk to them, they're like, I can't believe he ain't a killer.
Right.
He pulled the trigger.
Yes.
But he ain't a killer. Or I can't believe he got shot. What was he doing in that? Our kids are scared. So this is what also angers me. If our kids are scared and so they carrying a weapon, that means we as adults have not created the safe environment so they don't feel the need to carry that. That's on us as adults.
Exactly. And you're 100%. And that's one thing, just dovetailing on that, is one of the reasons why I'm so engaged in Park Ridge Park and the work that I'm, you get what I mean? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a safe zone, a family zone. This is a no gun zone. This is a no drug zone. This is no violence zone. So that the children in our community can be children and have a place to congregate, play, families can come out to do. And that's what we're trying to do, to create a peaceful zone, working with organizations such as CLR, AFC, MBK, and what's my brother now? I missed my brother's name, the big brother, you know who I'm talking about. I don't remember his name because I don't want to forget him.
Yeah.
But groups with We the People's Growers Association, with Melvin Parsons and stuff like that. We're all trying to create so people can have a healthy environment to live in and to play in. And we believe that if we start right here in this one little place to radiate in and stuff like that, trying to create healthy environments and stuff like that. But Brother Derek, I know you reach out to organizations and we reach out to you and we dialogue back and forth, right?
Yeah.
And one thing, like a lot of people may not understand, I'll make this real clear. We aren't police officers. We don't act as police officers. Derek doesn't tell us, his officers, they don't tell us what's going on in the streets. Let me make that real plain. And we don't tell you what's going on in the streets. We simply being able to understand and know where to go and how to handle situations. And that what makes this relationship that we have so unique, that we respect each other's boundaries and what have you. Because they don't tell us who did this and who did that. And we don't tell them who did and who did that, but we able to work together. There's an organization that you're working with out of Detroit. called D-Live.
Yep.
And you're forming here in the county an organization that's called We Live.
Mm-hmm.
Tell my viewing audience, what is the We Live, the D-Live, which you're modeling off of and we're working with? They're demonstrating, they're teaching people up in the sheriff engagement, such persons as Billy Cole and Marv Gundy, how to respond to that and stuff like that. What is We Live and what does it do?
Yeah, so We Live stands for Washtenaw Embraces Life is Valuable Every Day. Really powerful brother Ray Winans out in Detroit created something called D-Live, Detroit Life is Valuable Every Day. And the whole purpose of it is to stop retaliation. Mm-hmm. So you think about someone who's been a victim and a survivor of a gunshot. They got all kind of stuff going on. They go to the hospital. We got great hospital systems here in Washtenaw. We patch them up physically. Doctors send them on their way. But who helps them deal with the mental trauma of being a gunshot survivor? Nobody. So what D-Live does in one of the deadliest hospitals in the country, they have trained people who survive. They are trusted advisors in the community who get to go into that hospital bedside and help that individual. We call it giving them doses, like you would for any kind of illness, give them doses to help deal with that anger and that trauma so they never feel the need to go and retaliate. We brought them out here over 3 years ago. We had a young man, the first person. I just happened to know him. I said, you know what? I'm done. I don't know what else to do. Ray, can y'all come out? And they just came out and volunteered, sat at his hospital bed. And I'm happy to say 3 years later, he's now working for We Live and D-Live, doing this same work, going in the hospital rooms at St. Joe's and hopefully at U of M to reach in and help people to deal with some of that trauma before they think about leaving. And most folks, again, we a small community. You can count on one hand how many shooters we got. You can count on one or two fingers how many killers we really got.
Right.
Most of the folks ain't killers like that, although they have taken a life. But if you don't get in there and help someone, we can predict it. So We Live is a way to prevent what we can predict. You're a victim of gun violence. The data and everything shows that your trajectory of coming back a second time or being a suspect the next time is pretty high. If we can get the right people in front of them, we can help change that trajectory. And one other component, because you start talking about the community, it is a both and, not an either or. We can't arrest our way out of this, but you need some accountability, right? Somebody didn't kill somebody's kid. They need to go sit down somewhere. Prior to them picking up that gun, you need community investment. You need things to be done where they don't feel like they need to have that gun in the first place. Right. So you need both accountability and you need empathy, understanding, and community building. Any community that has been successful at tackling community violence, gun violence in their neighborhoods have had both. And so you have to be able to do both and have those boundaries and be able to walk in both worlds. Otherwise, you will fail because you can't stop violence. People pulling the trigger right now without accountability. And you can't maintain that without community building. There's a lot of things that have to happen. So one last component I'll say about it. I really, as a social worker, focus on root causes all my life. Right. And I know how important it is to solve root causes, employment, education, healthcare, all those things. But all the data will show you that even if you address root causes, segments of our community that are in the midst of violence, even as those needles move around root causes and things get better, jobs are there, there's a segment in our community that does not change. Community violence doesn't stop, even though those things get better. However, the converse is true. If you deal with community violence, you help people put those guns down, the shootings stop. Guess what happens? You start to deal with those root causes equally. People don't want to send their kids to an unsafe school. Businesses don't want to have their employees in an unsafe environment. Families can't think straight when you're walking out the house. I've shared my personal story after a shooting in my neighborhood when I was little. You can't even go to school and concentrate the next day. How are you going to learn something? Question for you. I know you interviewing me, but let me interview you. Can you tell me, and I promise the kids in every conversation I have about this, I will ask this. Why don't we have a community center, a full service community center in Eastern Washtenaw County? When the kids have been telling me for 20 plus years of doing this work, we need it. And when the data will say any place around the country that's tackled this issue has a physical, safe place for kids and families to come together to bridge those divides. Why don't we have a community center? That's one of our recommendations in this document. Sure is. Build an Eastern Washtenaw Community Center. And I don't know for sure 100%. If we built that center 20 years ago, how many of these kids wouldn't have been in my book? I don't know. But I have to imagine one or two of them might have found a different trajectory. It changed my life. I grew up in Inkster. The rec, the complex, got us off the street every day. Some of the coaches in there still to this day who resonate with people who changed my life. So I know personally having a safe space off the streets can help change a life. How come we haven't done that in Washtenaw County?
You know, I can give you all kinds of answers and reasons why. I can deal first with the gentrification process and the changing of the population going on right there. But the fact of business is that we were going to have a recreation center right there on the corner of Michigan Avenue and Park, where the International Village was going on. That land's been sitting there forever. I was at the meeting when then county commissioner, who was the county commissioner at the time, Ronnie Peterson, was down there. I was at the meeting right there. I was in there when the plug was pulled on it, right? And what happened to the money where it went there, right? It was going to be right down there because people didn't want it down there. I understand they was talking about the land being contaminated and stuff like that. I get that, right? But there's ways to deal with that. You can build a parking structure over all that, and there's other things that you can deal with the contaminated land. But the fact of business is that people who need the most help, he'll help the most, you get the most help. So you should have built it there. We had another one that was going out, from my understanding, out in Ipsy Township, right? Pulled the plug on that YMCA. And somebody gave us some old silly ass reason as to why they didn't want it out there, which is a bunch of bullshit. And me and you both know that it is. You know what I'm saying? So people are playing. They're playing games. I'm just going to tell you straight up and down. People are playing politics with people's lives out here. And you know, I had a conversation and stuff like that, and I'm gonna start pulling the gloves off on this show and start calling names out for what it is, right? We should have a community center. We should have a YMCA. Gail just said Superior Township. It's like I said earlier, most of our financial resources in this area comes through the county board of county commissioners. The eastern side of Washtenaw County keeps getting the short end of the stick because we have poor representation of the people out here. The county commissioners don't speak for the people because they don't know the people, because they don't engage with the people. So they don't know what's hell going on. They've only worked around here just to get the butter biscuit. Sellouts, compromise, working for developers and big business, doing the will of those people. What's going on? Take a look out there on the E-Course Road corridor. You think that just happened overnight? That didn't just happen overnight, right? The Center for Mobility, that didn't just pop up. Amazon plant, Amazon warehouse going out there on Michigan Avenue, Denton Road. That didn't just pop up. We know about those things. We know what's going on. We see these things. There's a big development that's going on right there on Michigan Avenue in between Hamilton Street and Adams Street. You think those people just all of a sudden thought it was a good idea to build a stem up in there right now? No, these things has been going on for a long time. While they were doing a whole bunch of stuff that is going on for big business developers, in the meantime, the brothers and sisters, the children and babies in this community are being overlooked. These tax dollar money need to go to the people who need help. But instead, our officials, once they go to the all-you-can-eat seafood dinner and steak dinner, they seem to forget where they came from. You claim that you're from this community and of this community, then why you ain't representing and acting for the best of this community? But you work better for people who grease in your pocket and your pounds. You said Rob will be on the show in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna get down into that and explain exactly how this money is going. You know, got me fired up there.
Listen, I might have to be a co-host, right? I'd ask the right question. But let me say this: it didn't happen yesterday, and we won't be out of this situation tomorrow. I know, because I sit in a position where people often say, well, why ain't the sheriff's office doing this? Why ain't y'all doing that? What about all this money? Y'all got the millage dollars and all this. And I look at the millions of dollars invested. I look at the hundreds of people who now getting mental health that weren't before. I look at the fact that we got co-response units, a social worker and an officer literally in a patrol car as partners. I look at the fact that you got social workers and crisis negotiators. So the SWAT team got therapists on it. I look at all those things, and yet we still have issues in our community. It is not one magic wand or one magic answer. We Live by itself is not going to solve this. Arresting people, solving crimes by itself is not going to solve this. We didn't get here yesterday. We're not going to be out of this tomorrow. But it is that constant pushing the boulder uphill in the right direction. So again, I know you're jumping on the commissioners. I get it. All right, listen. But I just want to say one little piece to that. There is a lot of blame to go around. We could talk about what's happening in our communities, right? We could talk about what's happening, yes, in boardrooms, more than just at the county. Let's look at the city, the townships, all across. We can look at what's happening in our schools and in business. I'll say again, when I say community, I mean us all, law enforcement included in that, right? When you put all of us together, we are failing those most impacted, our young people around violence. So I get you there. So I just wanted to say, like, there's a lot that's being done, but yes, there's folks that need to be called out. I'll say this, there is no way we can continue to be quiet. Jeffrey Canada, who created the Harlem Children's Zone, said this. He said, 50 years ago, when I was a product of that school and we graduated and only like 5% of the people graduated, and for 50 years, we've kept that graduation rate. For 50 years, we've been doing the same thing with the same people failing our people. So the question is, what are we going to do to actually make a difference? When we say now we need a community center, it's not because it just feels good. It's because it could save lives. When we say we need investment in Eastern Washington County, not a program, a couple $1,000, we need structural investment in home ownership and helping the school with their debt and a community center, all these things. That's because it can save lives. So the time for just talking about it feels good, pie in the sky stuff, let's put our money where our mouth is. We are one of the most educated, wealthy counties in America. We can solve this problem.
Good brother Eric Brown, I have to respectfully disagree for you. We speak life, not death. Yes, violence is ingrained into the to American fabric. However, we continue to use that as an excuse to accept violence as though this is America. We're going to continue to have violence. That's why we have certain movements and organizations move. Classic example, Survivor Speak, Trisha Duckworth, addressing violence, community violence, stuff like that. Sharisa Allen, I throw these names out here. People who are actually in the streets doing something. We're speaking life, not death. Marshall Alvarado, I seen you come on out there. We need hope.
Yes.
Yeah, we need hope.
And this is why I want to keep saying that I know we are angry and upset because we lost another life, but I want people to have hope because I've seen it. Now, I know that everybody can't see it, but I've seen people in the room, a young person look at another person and say, the beef is done. When we got done, listen, when we got done with that meeting, we weren't outside. I looked out the window and I seen those same two young men shaking hands. I'll give you another example. A young man held a barbecue on Memorial Day and he brought together two brothers who were beefing. They squashed the beef on social media. They posted it on social media for the rest of the young people to see. We didn't have to teach them to do that. They just did it because now they're getting the support around these kind of conversations to do what's right. So my point is there is a lot of hope that's out there. I get to see it. We sad, we upset, but I always turn that pain into purpose. I'm upset about this young man who was murdered, but guess what? I woke up extra early today. My phone ain't stopped blowing up. You probably hear it buzzing on the audio because I've been emailing, texting, calling everybody this morning around. Okay, we lost another one. There is no way I'm gonna sit at home and cry about it and do nothing. We got to keep pushing this thing forward.
Yes, we do. And I know it's a lot out there saying, well, Bryan, you kind of hard on the county commission elected officials. Yeah, I am. Because we've been giving them too much pass around here. We've been giving our city council members pass. We've been giving our mayor pass. We've been giving trustees pass. We've been giving the township supervisors pass. Nobody's checking them. Nobody's doing a check and balance on them. In some kind of way, they have forgot that you are elected by the people to do the will of the people. The people don't do your will. You serve us. We don't serve you. In some kind of way, we have lost that understanding of what a democracy is. And you need to hear the people. Hear the voice of the people. Right. Go ahead, Derek.
I was just going to say, I get that. And I agree with you 1000%. But let me also say, we need people to be able to come together right now because if we are only pointing fingers and placing blame, guess what's happening? There's no progress and the folks are still out there suffering. So I agree with you. I think we do need to call people to the mat. I think we need to push ourselves, myself, yourself, everybody included. We need to do better. But I also think we have to do it where everybody comes together.
Yes, we do.
Accountability, enforcement stuff, community building, long-term systemic impact, all those things that sound good, we need to just do. Stop talking about it. Let's do.
Yes. And you're 100% correct. And that's, as much as you hear me, I'm not just blowhard and Hufflepuff, and Derek will tell you that. He know I'm boots on the ground. You know, my partner, my man, Billy Cole, and Supreme Fellow, Jeanette Haddon, we boots on the ground, hands on. And we are together, and we're coming together, and we are building toward a difference. You get what I'm saying? So it's not like we just sitting up in here bitching at this table, right? I'm bitching at this table is because, as I said before, the community failed this young man. And I know that we can do a lot more, a lot be done. So, Derek, you said you wanted to talk about community violence. And I'm glad that when I reached out to you, and we're going to have you back on a regular basis until we can really get a lot of the stuff down. Okay. Good brother, you're my friend and stuff like that. Okay. And all your statistics is fine, right? They really are fine. And I respect what you're doing in the literacy thing. But you need to get your ass out here in the field with the brothers and sisters and do some work. You're very intelligent, highly motivated, good working and stuff like that. The statistics is one thing, but when you're out here in the community with your hands in the dirt, in the mud, with the peoples, you get a whole different feel. So that's why we have hope. You know, we dialogue back and forth, you my mans and stuff like that, but I'm not accepting the negativity this morning. I'm not going for it this morning. I ain't having it. Okay. So peace, brother. We'll talk on another topic. Okay. We out here doing these things in the street with the support of not only, let me just say this, not only the support of Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, but the support of Ypsilanti Police Department. They get overlooked quite a bit because they're so shorthanded and short on resources. But the Goosey, I'm gonna get to them, Snoop, big brother out there, right? I'm gonna get to them. Ypsilanti Police Department is short on financial resources, short on manpower, but I do know Chief DeGucci has his heart in this 100%. We also had the support and working hand in hand with the new ideal with what am I trying to say? With Ellie Sabat and Victoria. You get what I'm saying? Restorative justice. So we're working together in this community.
Yes,
things are really being done.
And we got the right people in the right places.
We got, thank you.
Yeah.
The right people in the right places in these places. I talked with Sheriff Jerry Clayton. I know his heart as I know your heart. We got the right people in the right places, but we just got to move and mobilize. We need that money. Okay. We need to mobilize and move because that death last night is just one death too many. And it hurts, dear, because it hurts even more is because you're there. That young man was not a statistic. And I recognized his image and his picture. I didn't have a relationship with him, but I recognized his image and his picture. But just to know when you connect the dots to know what's going on, and I know I'm being redundant in my conversation. That's why I'm a little bit more animated, a little bit more pissed than normal, because this is preventable. You know, when I called Billy up yesterday, and I told you early before the show came on, because it was still an active crime scene. They were, you know, dragnet, if you will, dragnet going on. But when I called Billy up, he said, I'm on my way, dog. Where you at? I'll be there in 15 minutes. And I had to tell Bill, hold on a minute, man. The hook's still out here on the streets doing stuff like that. Let them do their thing. And then when we come in afterwards and which what we do, you get what I mean? To break the cycle. And we're right there to handle those things, you know? So Derek, I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but do you have anything that you really need to share? You know, before you come in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Can't forget about that. You know, I'm 62 years old, right? Sometimes I get older and forget. My big brother Harold Carter said, we can't forget about the churches. Ypsilanti has 21, 22, 23, 25, depending on who's doubling up in the church on that day. You know, you got churches sharing spaces. But the south side of Ypsilanti is just a half-mile square radius, if you will, half mile. And you've got 25 churches, 25 faith-based organizations who all profess the same God. Yeah, all profess the same God. Then how come we got so much disparity, death, poverty, homicides, drugs, addiction, substance abuse, alcoholism? So yeah, I'm gonna put them on the spot too, Harold. And we know that we can't do anything. I'm a believer in God. Whatever anybody else says, you believe what you want to believe. I know the power of God. Whatever you choose to call him, that's your business. I simply call the creator God for sake of identification. I know that's a power outside of there that is greater than myself that brought my black ass this far. Because without that, I'd be still behind the prison wall somewhere or in the graveyard. So here, yeah, we do need the help of the churches out there. But one thing I know about the role of the church is save souls. Our job is to save your ass. So we understand that. So I don't expect them to do no more than what they already been doing.
So I'll add one more to the list. And this is not to blame. This is to call the reality of the reality and bring them to the table. Kendrick Lamar has a great line in one of his new songs, and he talks about silent killers, nonprofits, and churches. You can go look it up and you can figure out, deconstruct what he really means by that. But we also got to think about the nonprofit sector in Washington County. And again, this is not blame, because if we blaming and we ain't bringing them to the table, we just fighting amongst ourselves. And who's suffering? These young people. This is about, we all have to do better. Like our nonprofits, one of the first recommendations in the document, the first recommendation is commit to saving lives by stopping violence. It sounds like just semantics and words on a paper, but if you make that a part of your mission, your values, your goals, you start thinking differently about the work that you do. We got a ton of nonprofits in Washington County, a lot of good-hearted people who are smart, who want to do right. But how do we refocus the attention on this public health crisis? So when you talk about the churches, again, I'm not going to just blame the church.
Right, exactly.
There are many things that are happening.
Church does a whole bunch of stuff in this community. People ain't got a clue what they do.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about. Man.
Yeah. So again, it's not just the blame, but it is, we need all partners to come to the table to solve this, because not one can do without the other. And if we only pointing fingers and saying they not doing this, they not doing that, again, we not solving the problem. See, they want to pit us against one another. There are people out, honestly, there are people out there who try to pit law enforcement against communities. Let me just tell you, seriously, I'll just speak as somebody who grew up in a violent community, raised my family in a, I won't say violent, but a challenged neighborhood right here in Washington County. And I can tell you from living the experience, we call the police more than anyone. So when folks come into our neighborhoods and say, oh, the police, this, the police, I get it. There's things the police that have done have been horrible. We need to get better at that. I got it. I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying, though, is that officer who held your child while that child died and that mother who lost their child have a certain kind of connection that nobody else on this planet has. They understand the issue from a very unique perspective. And you can't solve this problem with one and arresting without the other and changing community. You need them both. And for those people who run around here pretending that we are against one another, I just tell they have no clue. And so if they selling you wolf tickets on that, they have no clue they leading you astray. The reality is you need all of the above to actually do this work and to save lives, period. I want it, because you asked me the question around what we can do. So there is this community violence intervention team. This is what I really wanted to talk about. That team that actually came together naturally and impromptu, who came up with these 14 recommendations. So I encourage people to read the document around these 14 things we can do in our community. And there are things that you as an individual, your organization, your show, the sheriff's office, community members who are watching, who all can do one or all of these 14 things. The churches, the nonprofits, they can all do some of these things. And when these conversations come up, like the community center in Eastern Washington County, that people are pushing for with the knowledge now that this is a way to save lives and stop the violence, to put the guns down. The last piece I'll say around hope is we have the ability, the resources, the people, the ideas, the innovation, the courage to do what's right, to hit those streets. We have all the components in Washington County, in Eastern Washington County, to deal with this. We just need the will to actually do it.
right. You heard that from Sheriff, let me just say that, Derek Jackson, Director of Community Outreach for the Washtenaw County Sheriff Department. Maybe I was speaking something in the light when I said sheriff and what have you.
Listen, there's one sheriff. Let me just be clear.
Yeah,
his name is Jerry L. Clayton. Don't forget the L.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry L. Clayton.
And you know what, Brother Clayton, he need to check in, and you know when he need to check in because he owe a dinner.
If you watching this, Sheriff, just so you know, yes, we're gonna settle the dinner
yeah,
issue.
That dinner, you know what I mean? Because I already got my suit. Billy got his suit hung up. We got a tie ready, and we were supposed to win another place, and we ended up going somewhere else. I ain't been to that restaurant, but Sheriff Jerry Clayton, if you out there, you can check in.
So let me just say though, in closing though, so people watching, like what they talking about.
Right.
There is a reason where the sheriff can sit down with supreme felons and have a conversation. There's a reason when Black Lives Matter first started here in Washtenaw County, and some of you who were running the local BLM group could sit down and talk with the Sheriff Jerry Clayton in the same room before it ever became a big issue. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that Derek Jackson, a social worker, is helping to run a police agency. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. When Jerry first asked me, I said no, because I couldn't see the vision. Mm-hmm. He had a vision to do this. And some people get on him because he's the sheriff. I got it. He got big, broad shoulders. He can take it. Right. The reason I'm sitting in front of you today, and we can talk about the hope that we have, the reason that there's a summer youth employment program, some of y'all might have forgot 6-7 years ago, it was Sheriff with the pastors who sat up there and had that press conference and said, start the summer youth employment program in Washtenaw County. You don't see his name on that. You don't see the sheriff's office badge on that. You see hundreds of kids working over the summer, right? So I say all that because I just got to put the realities out there around what folks who are doing the work and those who really just talking. Mm-hmm. I say all the time on my own personal social media, some talk about it, some be about it. And if you be about it, you ain't got to be out there looking for the limelight. You just doing the hard work. The reason I want to come on this and talk about these things is there are people, I get to talk about it. There are people who are actually doing the work to create this, to put their hands in the soil. And we need other community members to jump in on this.
Yeah. And also, not only do you have a summer program, you actually have convicted felons. And I'm going to just say it like that. Mm-hmm. Working in the sheriff's department.
Nobody hires more, other than maybe there's a couple of plants, mm-hmm. one out in Saline, one out on Michigan Ave in Ypsi Township, who might hire more people who are just as impacted than the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. Think about that for an example. Yeah. And they ain't sweeping our floors. They ain't informants, right?
Let's make that
they getting paid.
Make that clear. They're not informants and stuff like that. Let's just make that real clear.
But they getting paid really good money mm-hmm. to do what we've been talking about, to be the experts on community. Yeah. And that's just a fact.
Okay. And once again, like I said, this is Derek Jackson of the Washtenaw County Sheriff Department, Director of Community Outreach. My friend, what's going on? And so Ear to the Ground 197 is brought to you by Tracy Sweet Touch Productions, brought to you by Blackstone Bookstore and Cultural Center. And we're going to get on there later on about that and what have you. But Derek Jackson, I just want to thank you for coming out. And you and I discussed, and we're going to make this a regular meeting, a regular episode, if we have to do it on different days, because it's very important that we get ahead of this violence. It's been ongoing, it's perpetual. And we know that a lot of it was pre-existing prior to COVID and the pandemic. Yeah. But a lot of these things are resulting from out of that. And it's ironic we're talking about this right here is because Adam Paberts recognizes, as he works for the Washtenaw County Health Department, and he's reached out to me and to help distribute masks and coronavirus test kits. That's what's in those boxes mm-hmm. right over there. A lot of people don't know that, but Supreme Felons Incorporated, we distribute masks and test kits. And so for those of y'all who don't know where to get them at or how to find them, contact me, inbox me. 9 times out of 10, sometimes we can deliver them to you, but we always got available because coronavirus is still out there and it's still alive and kicking mm-hmm. and it's taking names. So still protect yourself out there. But like I was saying, is that a lot of this violence is residual from the pandemic and coronavirus and what have you. And we're dealing with that. And we got to get a hand on it. Derek, I want to thank you for coming out. I see you, big brother. Thank you for the compliment. And in a little while, I was hoping Mr. Johnny Lawrence would show up with Randy Scott. But for y'all that's out there, there's some ladies out here, Derek, and I'm gonna call they out by their name: Tracy Davis, Tarita Fonville, Vita Hesterly, Deborah Phillips, and Kara Hardy. They're my sisters, but they get on my nerves. Let me just tell you.
Hey, look, I didn't say that. Just so to be clear.
Yeah. I had Yancy on here last month. They hollered and screamed, Yancy, all that other kind of stuff. So I got Randy Scott coming on here in a little while. Yeah. They all giddied up and stuff like that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna block them from the show. Is what I threatened to do.
Oh man.
Yeah. Anyway, but Derek,
yes,
we'll be seeing you again real soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, brother, for sure.
Appreciate you. And with that, I'm gonna tune out. I'm gonna log off for a minute, then I'm gonna log back in. That way Randy can come in and get set up. Like I said, he's stuck in traffic, and I'm just grateful that, Derek, that you arrived a little bit early. Yeah, I love you too, Fonville. And I needed to laugh. I needed to lift up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna get my wife to be in the chat next. She's gonna swoon over me. I need some swooners out there too, right?
Ain't nobody said nothing about us. You know what I mean? But I bring these folks in there because they can blow a little horn and that little horn and everything.
I ain't musical at all. I can't help you with that, man.
Either way. Anyway, Brother Derek, I'm gonna hit the music and we're gonna get up out here.
Appreciate you.
See y'all. I'm gonna tune off just for a little bit. Don't go nowhere. But I'm gonna log off because I only got a little bit of film in the camera. So I'm gonna change roles and all that old kind of stuff. Tracy said, yeah, whatever, Tracy, whatever. Okay, whatever. We up out of here. Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and take off.
Got it. No, man, I appreciate you, man. That's a good guy. Yeah, I seen it.
Yeah, I seen it. No, it's not that many.
Yeah. All right, brother. Look, I'm out of here, man. You do an awesome job. I appreciate you. Yeah. And let me know. We'll circle back.
Yeah, I had to put them out there. All you got to do anytime you're ready, I'm gonna remind you. Just call me. All right, brother.